So yeah, welcome to the Veeam Backup Monitoring Management Pack presentation. Hopefully this is something that others can get use out of. I don't know though, it might be obsoleted if you watched the AI earlier, hopefully the microwave won't cook this turkey. But anyway, hopefully we'll keep this lighthearted, fun, and if you have questions, we can certainly address those. Let me get my slideshow going. Okay, hopefully I'm presenting the slides correctly. So the Veeam Management Pack we created based off of several decisions. One, we had a management pack that we were using, but things changed over time, and that was going to become a more expensive solution. It was something we were going to have to purchase. So we decided that we were going to write our own management pack. That purchasing the solution the company offered was not within our budget, and it offered a lot of tools that we didn't need. We really only needed the management pack, and purchase of the management pack only was not an option. So that's when we decided, we needed something to monitor our Veeam backups, and so we decided to do it ourselves. And I took a look first at the existing management pack we had before we lost it, just to see how they were doing it, and reviewed our organization's use of the product and what specifically we needed. And I am not a Veeam backup expert, so I didn't have that knowledge. So I leveraged our Veeam backup team in-house to gain information needed to build that management pack. And they created a list of the items, services, different types of jobs that we'd need to suit our needs and monitor our Veeam backups. And we wanted the design to be flexible. We wanted to be simple classes with discoveries. And that's where, building that out in SCOM became quite easy with the Select MP authoring studio. And that tool helped us a lot. There are other ways to do it. Through the years, I've done raw XML editing of files. I've used the Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio platform with the VSAE, the Visual Studio Authoring Extension, which is for SCOM. And we were fortunate in my company, we had the Select MP Studio, and that was the tool we used to try and build this out. It made building the classes and the discoveries and the monitoring rules, and we just used that tool to build this out. And so one of the things, it had to be flexible. I wanted it to be simple enough that we could leverage the SCOM console to be able to make changes, to create overrides, and to just have a display of all the jobs and all the systems that were involved with our Veeam backup environment. I initially had a group to display the SQL servers based on naming conventions, but I decided to change that and actually created a discovery which is based on the SQL Server database name Veeam Backup. And so that's more dynamic than trying to change a name if we ever change the database servers. Most of the classes are registry based. There are some that are scripts, and it leverages the PowerShell built into the Veeam or the Select tool that allows me to build SQL or PowerShell script discoveries rather quickly. And we wanted to monitor all the services on the backup servers, the enterprise manager, the proxy servers, and the SQL servers. And we had specific jobs we wanted to monitor, so they needed to be discovered. And there was also a rule I created for credential failure, and we'll get into more of that in a bit. But I had to use some credentials for some of the queries for the discoveries. And that was due to security parameters set up by our organization. So what's in the MP? There's 9 different classes with 9 discoveries, 27 monitors, 1 rule, that's the credentials rule, which may not be needed in your case, 1 folder with 11 different views. And so we had 3 specific types of backup jobs. We're looking at backup jobs, file copy jobs, and replication jobs that we're monitoring in this environment. And so we needed to discover those types. and create monitors for those jobs in addition to monitors for all the services. The services were pretty straightforward. The monitoring for the backup jobs was a little more challenging, but I found through looking at the other management pack that we had owned at one time that all that information is contained within WMI on the backup servers. So that made it a lot easier to just groom through all the data that the backup servers maintain and look for the jobs that way. And that's how this management pack works. So it's real basic in its design, leveraging registry and WMI to gather that data with some PowerShell scripting thrown in there to roll it all up. And we wanted it to be flexible enough that if we did add other job types, that we could simply add those in using the same sort of mechanism that is used now to discover those 3 previous backup job types. And what I found also was leveraging the Veeam Backup event logs. I was able to identify successes and failures to be able to create the monitors. And we use retries here, so we didn't want to alert on the first failure of a backup job. And different ones use different counts, and so we had to take into consideration the number of times a job could fail before it was completely failed. So that's built into the monitor as well, as I'll show you during a demo. Understanding the Veeam backups, that's where I leveraged our Veeam backup team to help provide all the additional information of what they wanted monitored, what they wanted alerted on, and to create incidents for that so they could go correct any issues. WMI was used. The namespace for that WMI is just root Veeam BS. And WMI may require credentials. Again, that's based on your organization's security policies and how tightly they lock things down. In test environment, I don't use the credentials. In our production environment, I do have to use the credentials. So those are included in the script, and I'll review where they're at and how to change those. We leverage an in-house vault using mechanisms to retrieve that data. That's not included how we do it with our vault. You'll have to do that and build that out within your own environment if you need to use credentials. And the way that I got a list of all the different WMI metrics that are available, simply did a get WMI object to the namespace of root Veeam BS and specified the computer name to list out all those different types of WMI that were available. Some of the WMI queries I used were just select star from the various WMI items like job, the repository base, repository, and WMI extension. WMI extension I use strictly for checking whether my credentials were successful. So if I could read data out of that particular WMI, I would be confident that the credentials are going to work and I'd be able to get the remainder of the job information out of the backup servers. For job types, those are a list of the different types of jobs that Veeam Backups perform, and there's quite a lot of them. Again, we've only built it for 3 different types. Your organization may have different types of backups than what this management pack currently supports, but it's easy enough to write additional class discovery to find those additional jobs. So we'll go into a demo here. And there we go. So now we're sharing that. So this is basically your SCOM console. This is our dev environment. And the management pack just creates a folder here called Custom Veeam Backups. In production, we named it different, specific to our environment. But with the standard management pack that I put out on GitHub, it's just called Custom Veeam Backups. And in here, you can see all sorts of things. You can see all the servers, the backup servers, it breaks those down. We don't have an enterprise management server in our test environment. and the proxy servers. So it simply discovers those items and puts them in here for monitoring various services. The SQL class, this is the actual class. This is the new piece that I wrote into the management pack to be able to dynamically discover Veeam Backup SQL servers. And basically, it's just a discovery script that gets applied to the SQL servers, goes out, looks at the databases on the SQL servers and finds any of those that are named Veeam Backup. And that was on top of the Veeam group. I still kept it for the demo purposes. And I'll go through some of this in more detail, how you set all this up. Was just a naming convention that we used. I put that particular server in there. And again, it's just a group configuration that you change. If you're familiar with that, it's pretty simple and straightforward. And then here are the backup jobs that I talked about. So here we can see how the backup jobs come in. We have some critical errors on 2 of them. The rest are healthy. It's just some basic data I gathered from the Veeam Backup with WMI and with the registry to get different values in there to store that data. We don't have any file copy jobs on this environment, so they won't show up here. We do have some replication jobs that show up. And again, this is just for tracking, for roll-up, to see different alerts as they come in. If we get any of the service down or other server-related events, they come into this alert window. For the alert jobs, I did keep 2 old ones out here. And these monitors will stay in this window, but they will auto acknowledge if the backup is rerun and is successful within 3 days. And the reason I set it to 3 days is in case it hit on the weekend, someone missed it and didn't get in until Monday morning to be able to rerun that job. And so if they rerun the job and it does get a success, it will clear this automatically. Otherwise, if the 3 days goes past, you have to go in here and just close this. You know, if you're familiar with that, it's just a simple matter of opening the Health Explorer, finding the job, and then doing a reset within the Health Explorer, and that will make it healthy again. So we also are running SCOM 2019. I don't know if that's different with SCOM 2022. I haven't looked at that yet. So that's basically how the management pack works and displayed. And let's go into some more of the details now of how this works. So if you're familiar with Select, they do have an MP authoring tool that you can buy, just the authoring tool, but we have the whole studio, which allows us to maintain all our management packs sealed and unsealed in this environment. And it's a nice tool. Like I said, it's a lot easier to develop management packs in this environment than it is in, say, Visual Studio with the VSAE. Don't get me wrong, that's a lot more powerful and can do a lot more. But for this particular management pack, this is the route I chose to go because I wanted things to be simple. So that's where most of the development was done. Before we get too deep into that, I just wanted to show you through the authoring within the console, and I limited my scope just to this particular backup set of criteria and objects. You can see all the object discoveries are set in here, and they're real simple. So the backup jobs, if you look at those, you can actually go in and look at the configuration and look at the script that we're using to actually run this. So you don't need any special tools. You don't need the MP Studio. Also, you can use a standard editor and open the XML to be able to edit this. The one thing I did want to note, I talked about the credentials, and hopefully this is large enough. That's rather small. Let's zoom in here a little bit so you can see it here. So within here, you go down and right after I begin setting the namespace to begin gathering the WMI data, I just replaced what we're actually doing because I didn't want that in the released version of this management pack to the community. There's username and password. Again, these aren't real username and password. And basically what they do is they just create your credentials to be used within the WMI query. And you'll notice here at the end of these invoke commands, there's a credentials. They're commented out right now. But if you do need the credentials, you can apply the credentials right here. I also talked about how we check for the password error. That's what we do. So this just connects to that WMI extension. And then if that is successful, then I know that it returned data, and I just check the error count. If it's greater than 0, I clear the error first and check for error count. Then I write to the event log. And what that also does is that enables the rule to work to see whether password retrieval failed or what happened that we didn't connect. There could be other reasons. The system could be down and we wouldn't connect. At least I know that, hey, something went wrong. I have an alert in SCOM, an event in SCOM that tells me we have an error condition that we need to check. And then again, when we're using this to run the WMI query against the computer, you can see that's where the credentials will be used also. And again, these are just simple WMI queries. We're getting the job information and the base information. Those were the only two WMI values that I needed to pull in to get all the information I needed to discover the jobs. And again, each of those contains the credentials for that. And then all this does is it loops through all these jobs and builds out the data and builds out the instance within SCOM. And what we had to do was figure out that job types. And that's where I showed you how to get the job types. That will list out all the different job types. When I was working on this, I simply worked with this raw data within a PowerShell window to be able to look at that, to be able to analyze it, to see, okay, backup job type 0 is our backup jobs. 51, I think, is the file copy, and I think 60 is the replication jobs. But this is how I figured out how to get all of this working. And then it just basically, using instances and things within SCOM itself, it builds everything out in this script. And that's how we do the job discovery. So if credentials are an issue, you will need to go in here. I don't recommend putting plain text password in here. At the least amount, use PowerShell and build some sort of encoded or encrypted password file that you can read in here. At best, like our case, we have a very secure vault with lots of credentials and all sorts of other things that are needed to be able to get those passwords out. So again, keep that in mind. That's going to be different for each user's environment, whether your WMI is wide open or whether it's locked down and secured. As far as, the backup server class and so forth, again, that's just a simple WMI discovery. If you look at the configuration, you can see the XML that's used. Now I'll go into a little more detail within the MP Studio product, but you can see these are just simple registry values of where the different services are set and what those different services are that we bring in to monitor. And so it's a pretty simple, straightforward type of management pack. You can probably find this management pack fragment within Kevin Holman's fragments. If you use fragments and some other tool to build your management packs, you can simply use those to add, or you can simply copy one of these sections of XML and bring that into your environment to monitor other types of backups, whatever they might be. Again, we only had 3 types of backups, so that's all we wanted to monitor. We didn't care about discovery of things that we weren't using. The monitors, we'll go into that quickly. Again, for the backup jobs, the monitors are simply looking at the event log and taking a look at the Veeam Backup log for a simple expression. This is where I had to analyze the Veeam Backup logs to determine what event types, source events, levels were generated based on, this particular one is a success. If we get a repeated event of failed, we look at that for 3 different times. Excuse me. And that count is different depending on the job type. I believe the file backup copy jobs and the replication jobs we set to 5. They had 5 retries set up in there. And then here's the interval that it will reset. It will keep it there and look for another event within 3 days. And that was so it could self-acknowledge. And that's how that works. And then everything else is pretty much straightforward. And we wanted this so anybody could come in and maintain this. The registry class, again, you can check availability. Here's all the different services we monitor for the backup. We have the same thing for the enterprise manager and for the broker. And you can see all the different services that we monitor for the broker. And the SQL class, we also wrote a monitor to do a ping because we were discovering this as a non-Windows object, as a Veeam backup object. And so the ping wouldn't work against that. So we created our own ping to be able to check whether that system was alive or not, and would feed into the whole Veeam backup management pack. And that's really it. There was the one rule that was set out here, and again, that was just for our environment. If we had a password failure, so I would get an alert generated knowing that, hey, credentials changed. It typically works. Occasionally it doesn't. So things get out of sync when we're changing between AD and our vault, and sometimes it will fail if the timing's right with the password change and the discoveries and things like that. So it does happen occasionally, and that's why I wanted to know about it, to make sure it's not an ongoing problem. Within the Veeam MP Studio, we have the classes that we build out for each of these. So we have the backup jobs, we've got the backup service registry for the enterprise management for the SQL, as well as the transport, which is the proxy server, our file copy jobs, our replication jobs, and our SQL group. In addition, then there's a discovery that corresponds to each one of those. And this is where I showed you the code earlier. Again, all the code is right in here. It's the same sort of code that we had that I showed you previously through SCOM. It's just easier for me to make changes in here when I need to not affect the SCOM environment. And then I can put all these changes together, test it if I want, and then deploy it. And that way, as I'm making multiple changes, SCOM isn't continually distributing this management pack to those Veeam backup servers. And that's another thing I like about having this tool. The service registries, again, those can be done with the edit wizard. And sometimes this takes a little while to bring up, because what it's actually doing, and Silac can correct me, is going out to the system, pulling in registry values so you can look at and pick and choose. And so that made it pretty straightforward to build that out. And, some of the things, and again, this isn't a Silac demo, but some of the things that you can do is you can import fragments right here, and you can create new management pack option. You can see here the frequency that we collect this. So for the different services, for the backup servers, the proxy servers, the enterprise management servers, we just schedule that discovery once a day. The actual jobs I scheduled to run every 4 hours. And we did that just in case there are changes made during the day, that we would discover those changes, whether a job was deleted, a job was added, or a job was modified, that we would have that information during the backup cycle. Most of our backups in our environment don't start until 5 p.m. and then they run through till 8 a.m. or something like that in the morning. So most of our backups are done overnight, and those are the time frames that we have. And again, with Silec, they did a great job. You can just go through each one of these items with a next and just pick and choose your different properties. It's similar to doing an import management pack fragment or editing those manually and building your own XML. And again, it gives you straightforward ways to build out the folders that you want out there. All the views that are handled in the environment are placed out there, and all the monitors. And again, we went through and we built out all the service monitors that Veeam management or Veeam Backup uses on all the different servers, the service broker, the backup server, and the enterprise monitoring server. And so that's basically how we set this management pack up. And it's worked well. I think I've had 2 failures with it, which I had to go back and just modify some code. So again, if it is something that you're doing in your environment with the Veeam Backup, and it's something you want to download off of GitHub, we can certainly get you the link for that. So there's the GitHub. It's just github.com, dsmith14w, and it's called Veeam Backup MP. And so go ahead, download it, contact me. I mean, if it's really an interest out there and it's not working the way that you'd like it to work, let me know. I'll work with you, and we can build out some more monitors or rules or whatever, or tweak the way it's working. I'd really like this to be something that could be used by other organizations with little to no work. Again, I'm just a technologist. I don't represent any company. Wellspan is actually healthcare. So yeah, so this is first thing that I've released publicly. I've built other management packs for our environment, but this is the first one that I shared out publicly. So yeah, if you do download it, send me your feedback, whether you like it or don't, or need improvements. I'd love to hear from you.